These are environmental activists in France, clashing with the police over farming and water use. A precious commodity and a basic necessity for life at the centre of rising concern and conflict. Europe has a water problem. Rising temperatures mean its snow is melting, rivers are dwindling, canals are drying up, and punishing droughts persist. It's having a huge impact. Here's everything you need to know. You've probably heard about drought in the southern part of America or in sub-Saharan Africa, but actually it's a live issue now here in Europe. According to the European Drought Observatory, around a third of the continent is experiencing a drought warning and 10% is under a severe drought. It's been estimated that the total water loss across Europe is now about 84 billion tonnes a year. And a recent major study suggests that Europe is now regularly losing more groundwater than is being replaced by rainfall. In parts of France and across much of Spain, water restrictions are in place, and the leaders of both countries say that a lack of fresh water is now a critical national issue.
Il nous faut pour ça une tarification qui soit progressive. Et l'objectif du plan doit être de garantir à tous les Français un accès à une eau potable de qualité pour ses besoins essentiels.
Drought is a complicated thing. Water mismanagement is a big issue. Did you know that we lose 20 to 25% of our drinking water from our pipes just because of leaks? Overconsumption and illegal water use is a major problem too. In Spain, for example, there have been worries about strawberry farmers in the south of the country impacting the Doñana wetlands, an important and fragile ecosystem. In England and Wales, for example, we use about 14 billion litres of water a day. The National Audit Office has predicted that we're going to need an extra 4 billion litres of water per day to counter the growing threat of drought from climate change. And that's another important point, because while lots of Europe has always experienced the natural cycle of drought, climate change is a force that's making that much worse. And that's for a few reasons. Generally higher temperatures mean there's more evaporation from the ground, rivers and lakes. And on top of that, scientists say climate change is making extreme events like heat waves more likely, more intense and longer in duration. This bakes the ground hard so that when intense rainfall happens, it flows over the ground rather than soaks in, which can increase the risk of flash floods. Another issue is ice or lack of it. Europe's glaciers are shrinking at an unprecedented rate, depriving major rivers and reservoirs of replenishment over time. The Rhine River in Germany is a great example of this. It got so low in 2022, which by the way was Europe's hottest ever summer, that cargo ships couldn't even use it. The impact of drought, of not having enough fresh water to meet the needs of the population, can have a profound effect even in relatively wealthy nations and economies.
If I think about Austria as a water-rich country and the discussions we had earlier this year, because our groundwater levels were really low. This led to the question if in a case of a crisis, the water law should be changed so that water utilities, drinking water utilities, have the priority in water use.
In Spain, farmers are warning of irreversible crop losses, especially to cereal growers. Dry ground and vegetation means that wildfire seasons are starting earlier and burning more intensely. Ecosystems and habitats really start to suffer without enough water, rivers and wetlands in particular, with knock-on effects for fish and bird life. Drought can even impact energy security. In Norway last year, a lack of water impacted the country's ability to produce hydropower. And in France, a lack of access to enough river water meant they had to temporarily reduce nuclear power output. A lack of rain and snowfall impacts tourism too. We all saw those pictures from the ski resorts in the Alps. And in parts of France this summer, there's a ban on refilling swimming pools too. In the end, As so many people living in more vulnerable parts of the world already know, living without enough fresh water is really hard. And there's only so much adapting to change people can do before they simply have to move. The UK and large parts of Europe have always enjoyed abundant fresh water, but we are now starting to see how climate change can threaten a precious resource that we often take for granted.